How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf Kuf Samach Daled, Daf 164 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, the first half of the Daf kind of continues talking about like erasing and writing over erased stuff, and then the second half of the Daf talks about get makusher kind of stuff. It ends with some interesting stuff. All right, we're gonna get started on Daf Kuf Samach Gimel Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Gufa, we said earlier, Amr Rav Shtar Abba Hu Ve'edav Ala Machak Kosher Azoy. So Rav says that if you have a document, and Be'etzim the whole thing has been erased once before, and on the erased parchment you write some text, right? You write the document, and you have witnesses sign the document. It's Be'etzim, it's a shtar, but just that the parchment has been erased before. Okay. Kosher, it's fine, there's no problem. Vim Tomer, maybe you'll ask though. Now we're going to ask all sorts of questions about how can we trust that this document is legitimate and that nobody's been tampering with it. Vim Tomer, maybe you'll suggest mochek v'chozer mochek. But maybe if we're saying that this next section we're gonna have to do like slowly. It's not like that hard. It's kind of technical. Anyway, so if you're going to suggest that a document that has been erased and rewritten, the text, the signatures, well then, if that's kosher, so then maybe somebody can take a legitimate document, right? So you have parchment, it's been erased, on top of it was written text, witnesses signed. Okay, totally legitimate document. But then this shmendrik who has the document, he erases the top of the document, he erases the text, and he says, I own the Brooklyn Bridge. And now he has a document that says that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge, and there's witnesses that are signed on it, right? He obviously preserved the witnesses, they're legitimate witnesses. He erased the text that said whatever it said, and instead he writes that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge. Right, that sounds risky, because if we're saying that it's okay to use a document that's been erased, well then, what's preventing somebody from erasing it another time and writing that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge? So that's not a concern, because well, you'll be able to tell the difference, because you'll be able to tell that the signatures that the witnesses signed on a portion of the document that was signed only once, whereas the part about the Brooklyn Bridge, you'll be able to tell that it had been erased twice. I don't know what I just said, but the witnesses will be on a section of a document that had been erased only once, whereas the Brooklyn Bridge part will be on a section of a document that had clearly been erased twice. So in comparison, you would be able to tell that the text was erased more thorough, right? It was erased more times than the signatures were. Okay, fine. Okay, but what about the following scenario? Maybe what this Shmendrik is going to do is he is going to have a piece of parchment. He will go to the part of the parchment where the witnesses go. He'll, spill some ink over there. He'll erase that ink. Okay, so that means that basically the section where the signatures will go has already been erased once. He will then write up a whole document, text, witnesses, everything, erase that. So now you have a scenario where basically everything's already been erased. Well, everything's been erased. The text part has already been erased once. The signature part has already been erased twice, right? Because he had initially put some ink there, erased it, then written text and signatures and erased everything. So the text has been erased once, the signatures has been erased twice. I think the art scroll said that, and you won't necessarily be able to tell that that one part is once and the other part is twice, because in order to tell that it's been once versus twice, you would actually need the text to be still on it and also dried or something, which wouldn't be the case here because I guess he already erased everything. So b'etzem what you have is you have a parchment where the top section has been erased once, the bottom section has been erased twice, and then he's going to now write a legitimate document on that, He's going to write text, and he's going to have witnesses sign the bottom, which is which right to the top. So he's going to write text on the top part that has already been erased once. He's going to have the signature sign on the bottom that has been erased twice, and apparently I think he's going to take away the parchment before it can dry, so they won't be able to tell the difference yet between once erased versus twice erased. Okay. Then he's going to erase the top part, and he's going to write that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge. So when he erases the top part now a second time, the whole document's been erased twice. Okay, sorry, it's very technical, but be'etzem, what'll happen is you can have a scenario where he basically has a document where the text has been written on parchment that's been erased once. The signatures are signing on a part of the document that's been erased twice. He'll then, after the fact, erase the top part, Nachamo, and write that he owns a Brooklyn Bridge, and now he has a document that the whole thing, Sachakol, has been erased twice. The top says he owns the Brooklyn Bridge, the bottom has witnesses signed on it. Okay? So again, maybe initially he will spill some ink on the section of the parchment where the witnesses will go, and then he's going to erase that section. That then when he writes, and then I think you have to add in that he then writes a bunch of stuff and erases everything. So now the part for the witnesses has been erased twice. The top part has been erased once. He's going to write a legitimate document and then erase. Then he's going to write a legitimate document, have the signatures at the bottom, and now the chihader machikle lahai. And then when he erases the top text a second time and writes that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge, the entire document, both sections, the text and the signatures, will have been erased twice. Azoy. Well, the witnesses would only sign on the document if it was, would only sign on an erased document if it was erased in front of them, and therefore they would, I don't really remember. And therefore what? Let me think for a second. So if that's the case, right, so meaning, because what happened in this scenario, that he initially on his own basically put some ink there and then erased it, and then he wrote a whole bunch of other stuff and then erased that. Now if and we're saying that they would have only subsequently, right, and okay, again, he put a bunch of ink in the signature area and then erased it, and then he wrote a whole bunch of stuff and then erased that, right? He wrote the whole document again, signatures and everything, signature section and everything, and erased that. And then he writes a new document and has them signed. The thing is, clearly the part that he's going to have them sign was already erased, and they're not going to sign that. They're only going to sign it if it was actually erased in front of them, which means what would happen if we start over? Okay, he takes a bunch of ink, writes it, and then erases it. He then writes a whole bunch of stuff, and then we're saying in order for the witnesses to ultimately sign on this erased document, they would have to see him erase it the second time. When he erases it, right, basically when he goes now to erase the whole document, they're going to see that the section that they're being asked to sign on actually was already erased, whereas the rest of the document wasn't, and they're going to know that something is up. Okay, it's very technical stuff. Alright, fine. Okay, beseder. So they're only going to sign, right? It's only going to sign on an erased document if they themselves saw it be erased, so that they could tell if anything shady is going on in advance. Okay, meisvei. Now we have a kasha on Rav, because Rav is saying that you can have a document that is erased, that has been previously erased, and then you could write the text on the top, and you can have witnesses sign the bottom, even though everything had already been erased once before, and that's completely fine. However, meisvei, we have a kasha from a brisa. Hu ala niyur ve'edav ala mechak. If you have a document where the text is on blank, it says niyar. I assume it's okay to say parchment, so I'm going to say parchment. So if you have the text of the document on plain parchment, never erased before parchment, and the witnesses are signed on erased parchment, right, previously erased parchment, kosher, it is a kosher document. Interesting. So we have a brisa saying that if you have a document where the text is on a clean parchment, but the signatures are signing on, or the witnesses are signing on previously erased parchment, it's kosher. Now, if what Rav is saying is correct, what does Rav say? Rav says that it's okay to have a document that the whole thing has already been erased previously. Well then, if that's the case, and we're saying that this document where the text is written on clean parchment and the signatures are on erased parchment, well then, can we have a scenario where the person with the star then just erases the top, erases the text, replaces it with I own the Brooklyn Bridge, and now you have an entire document that's been erased once before, and it has text, it has witnesses, and Rav is going to say that that's kosher. Shouldn't we be concerned? Maybe we should be concerned that maybe the person with the document is going to erase the top, right, the text of the document that had never been erased before. And he's going to write that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge. And Rav would say that's a legitimate document, right? You can have a document where the text and the signatures are on previously erased parchment. Well, and for the Gemara, the chazvei hochi, well, the witnesses, when they sign, they would write the following sort of note. Anachno saide chasamno al mochako. We witnesses signed on a previously erased section of the document. Vishtore kosav al niyara, whereas the text of the document was written on plain, on clean parchment, and therefore, if he then erases the top and writes that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge, so then that would raise a flag, because apparently the witnesses signed a document where the text had never been erased before, and now the text has been erased before, so it will immediately be a red flag. Where are they writing this note? If they're writing this note beneath their signatures, well then, Gayezle, he'll simply take a scissors and trim off the note. And if they are writing it above their signatures on the part of the parchment that has never been erased before, Machikle, he'll just erase it with the rest of the document, and you'll just have an entire document that's been erased before. So the Kazve Bain side, they're writing it between each witness. Okay, so between each witness, they're writing it in that way. If you erase it, then you can't cut it out, and you would have to erase it, but then you'd be able to tell that it's more erased than the rest of it. Okay. If that's the case, Ema Seifa. Okay, but if we're saying that they could just write this note on it, well then what about the Seifa of the Bryce that says, Hu ala machak ve'edav ala niyar, that if the text is on a section of the parchment that had already been erased, ve'edav ala niyar, and the witnesses are signed on clean parchment, posel. That is unacceptable. But Amai, why is it unacceptable? If you could just add notes to the document, add a note. Amai posel, Achanami, here also. Nichtavu achi, write the following. Anachna saide chasamna al niyare. We, witnesses, signed on clean parchment. Vishtore al mochaka. And the text of the document was written on a parchment that had been erased once before. Hashtanami, so I think it's following it up. But again, I'm backing up a line. Ochanami nichtavu hachi anachna saide chasamna al niyara vishtara al mochaka. Hashtanami my omart. And what would be the problem over here? Mochek choser umochek. Like, what should be the problem? What are we concerned that he's gonna back up a second? So meaning, we're saying that a document where the witnesses are signing on clean parchment and the text has been written on once erased parchment, so that is a problem. But why? Why not simply write a line of text saying that we witnesses signed on clean parchment and the text was written on parchment that was erased once before, and what are you concerned about? What, that maybe he's going to erase the text and write that he owns the Brooklyn Bridge? But we already said that that parchment that's been erased once is different than parchment that's been erased twice. So if they're writing in their note that we signed on clean parchment and the text was written on parchment that had been erased once, well, then you'd be able to tell if it was erased the second time. We said that there's a difference between one erasure and two erasures. Well, that's only, you can only tell once it's been, or you can only tell that the document's been erased once versus twice relatively. Meaning, if you have signatures that are, if the witnesses sign on a section of the parchment that had been erased once, and the text of the document had been erased twice, so in comparison, you'd be able to tell that the top section has been erased twice, whereas the bottom section has only been erased once. You'd be able to tell relatively. However, but if the witnesses are signed just on clean parchment, so you have where the witnesses are clean parchment, and then above it where the text is erased, you won't be able to, like, it won't be obvious, to just look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's been erased twice. No, when you have two sections that have been erased, you could tell that one has been more erased than the other. But simply to eyeball a document and know exactly how many times it's been erased, that is not something that is possible. So therefore, even if they write that we signed a document and that our signatures went on a portion of the document that was clean, whereas the text was on a erased area of the document, that won't work because it will be hard to tell how many times it had been erased. And therefore, somebody could just erase it and write that they own the Brooklyn Bridge. Where am I? So we won't be able to know that, how many times it's been erased, and the person could be pulling shtick. But how about this? V'leise megilta achrise v'limchok v'lidme. But why don't we? How about this suggestion? Let's bring another piece of parchment. Let's write something on it. Let's erase it and let's compare. Right? Write down another document. I own the Brooklyn Bridge. Erase it and compare. What does this document look like to that? Does it look the same? If so, that means that the document has only been erased once. If it looks different, then yeah, maybe we're concerned that the initial document was erased more than once, and that there's shtick going on. Well, the thing is, each parchment could have its own unique characteristics. You can't just say that if you have two parchments and you erase both of them, they're going to look exactly the same. Within the same parchment, you can tell that this section has been erased more than the other. But to bring a separate parchment, there's no guarantee that they're going to look exactly the same after the same number of erasures. How about this though? How about this? Bring the document to court. Right? It's a document that the witnesses signed on a section that was clean. And the text is on a section that's been erased. And the witnesses write, we signed a document where the signature section was clean and the text was erased one time. And let us, so now our concern is, well, maybe the document has been erased at this point more than once and the text is fraudulent. So let's do this. Let's be Mekayim the Shtar in Bezdin, right? Either the witnesses could be Mekayim the signatures, we'll get other people to say, yeah, we recognize these signatures, okay. Well, probably we need other people, I guess, to recognize the signatures, because if they did it themselves, they would probably be able to know that they weren't signing about the Brooklyn Bridge. But anyways, it would be Mekayim the Shtar. Once we've validated that this is a real document, let us then erase their signatures, at which point we can compare what the signature section looks like now that it's been erased. We can compare that to the text above, and if it looks the same, that means that it's a legitimate document. So where am I? So where am I? So right? Do you validate their signatures in Bezdin to know that they're legit? And then erase their signatures, and then compare the erased section of the signatures to the above text section and see if they're the same. Well, the thing is that the top area where the text has been erased already, the day before, let's say. But this is freshly erased and they're not going to look exactly the same, but why don't you then, okay, so just give it a day or two. and come back and have a look, compare it then. Rabbi Yirmiyah, Chayshinon, the Bezdin Ton. Well, we're concerned that Bezdin, it's too complicated. Bezdin might, you might have a Bezdin that makes a mistake on this, and then it can lead to a bad outcome, right? All of a sudden, this guy owns the Brooklyn Bridge. He's going to institute tolls, right? I think the Brooklyn Bridge, when I was growing up, I think it was free. Is it still free? All of a sudden, this guy, all of a sudden, he owns the Brooklyn Bridge. He's going to institute tolls. All right. May as well take the battery tunnel. All right, where are we? Woo, that was something. Okay, now continuing in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah had said that a get poshit, the witnesses sign on the front of it. A get mekusher, the witnesses sign on the back of the document. Reb Chanina ben Gamliel said that actually by a get mekusher, if you sign on the front of the document, it's beseder, it's fine, because you could technically just open up the folds and then it's a get poshit. So therefore, even if you sign on the front of a get mekusher, it's okay. Heishiv Rebbe, but Rebbe asks, L'divrei Reb Chanina ben Gamliel, that according to Reb Chanina ben Gamliel, who was Reb Chanina ben Gamliel? Was it Rebbe's uncle? Or maybe like more than that? Maybe, depends, was he the son of Reb Gamliel Azakin or Reb Gamliel? But anyways, I don't know, may have been his uncle. Ve'alo eino dom izmanu shel zeh lizmanu shel zeh. Azoi. Poshet molach shona monin lo shona shtayim monin lo shtayim. Mekusher molach shona monin lo shtayim v'shtayim monin lo shalosh. Oy vavoy. V'zimnin dezif minei zuzeh b'mekusher misramile zuzeh beni beni ufarle v'amle avli shtaroi v'amle irkasli v'chosavle tavra v'chimota motizmane majvele poshet v'amle haniashta diyazvas minoi. Wow. Who can explain to me what I just read? What I just read is, okay, the thing is, Reb Chanina ben Gamliel says that, you know what, if you signed on the front of a get, if the witness is signed on the front of a get mekusher, it's okay, because you can always just open it up and it becomes a get poshit and magic. But it's not magic. It's actually problematic. Why is it problematic? It's problematic because the dates are different in a get poshit versus a get mekusher. The dates are different in a get poshit versus a get mekusher. We learned, I believe in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, I think it was a difficult sugya, we learned that the date, right, there's like Rosh Hashanah l'Melachim. When's Rosh Hashanah l'Melachim? I think Rosh Chodesh Nisan, maybe, I think. Rosh Hashanah l'Melachim, and I think we said that means, that it refers to, or maybe one of the things that it refers to, I'd have to brush up my Masechta Rosh Hashanah, is for shtars. That in the documents they write on year X of King so-and-so. So on a get poshit, on the first year of the king, you write year 1. On the second year of the king, you write year 2. But in a get mekusher, on year 1 of the king, you actually write year 2. On year 2 of the king, you actually write year 3. And apparently that's because that's how like the culture in which they lived, I guess that's how in the kingship in which they lived in, that's how they would do it. So they adapted that for the get mekusher, since get mekusher in general is like a more complicated thing. Okay. Now, So here's the thing, friends. So the thing is, it's not so simple to just flip between a get poshit and a get mekusher. It's not so simple for Reb Chanina ben Gamliel to simply say, you know what? If you put the signatures on the front of the get mekusher, nish geferlich, it's fine, because you can always just open it up and voila, magic, it's a get poshit. But one second. The date in a get poshit is different than a get mekusher. In a get poshit, on year 1 of the king, it says it's year 1 of the king. On year 2 of the king, it says year 2 of the king. But on a get mekusher, year 1 of the king, it says year 2 of the king. Year 2 of the king, it says year 3 of the king. Okay, and what's the nafkamina? The nafkamina is the following. That Shimon can lend Reuven $1,000. And he writes a get mekusher. And they write a get mekusher. So Shimon now has a get Mekusher. And in the get Mekusher, on year 1 of the king, they would write year 2 of the king, even though really it's year 1 of the king. And let's say the loan is payable in a month from now. So Be'etzem, the loan, the document, which is a get Mekusher, says that the loan is due, that the loan took place on year, let's say the first of the second year of the king, and it's due on the first, right, in the first day of the first month of the second year of the king, and it's due on the first day of the second month of the second year of the king. But it's due in a year and a month from now. Okay? So now what's going to happen is, what's the concern? The concern is the following, that Shimon might be a sneaky little guy. So now what might happen is, okay, so Shimon lent Reuven $1,000. Okay, Reuven owes Shimon $1,000. Reuven writes Shimon a get Mekusher that says be'etzem that the loan is due in a year and a month. Reuven gets the money 2 weeks later, and he pays back Shimon the $1,000. He says, okay, Shimon, give me back the document so I can tear it up. Shimon says, I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true, that the document is lost. The document is lost, but I will write for you a receipt that you paid me back. And he writes the receipt dated 2 weeks after the loan took place. And now what happens is, comes a year and a month later, or at this point a year and 2 weeks later, Shimon, of course, didn't lose the document. He was hiding it, and he takes it out, and he comes to Beis Din, and he opens up the fold, so it's no longer a get Mekusher, it's a get Pashit, and the signatures are on the front. And what does it say in the get Pashit? That the loan is due today, a year and a month later. And he comes to court, he says, look, I have a document that says Reuven needs to pay me $1,000. Reuven says, what do you mean? I paid you back the $1,000. I even have the receipt. He says, oh yeah, let me see the receipt. What does the receipt say? Oh, that receipt's from a year and 2 weeks ago. But this a year and that receipt is from a year and 2 weeks ago. This document, though, says that the loan took place. Did I just confuse myself? 1 second. Oh yeah, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. So basically, the receipt. So he says, "Let me see the receipt." The receipt is from a year and 2 weeks ago. This document, though, because it's a get Pashit, and what does it say? It says the loan took place a month ago, and it's due now. This is a different loan. You're showing me a receipt from a loan from a year ago. But this is a get Pashit. The date on this document, it says that I lent you $1,000 a month ago, and now it's due. So basically, a get Pashit and a get Mekusher is not interchangeable. You can't just say, oh, well, you can open up the get Mekusher and it becomes a get Pashit. So again, from the top of Kuv Samach Daled Mavez, V'alo eno dom izmano shel zeh lizmano shel zeh. But you can't just open up a get Mekusher and make it a get Pashit. The dates on them are different. Pashit malach shana monolo shana shtayim monolo shtayim, and I get Pashit. When it's year 1 of the king, they write year 1 of the king. When it's year 2 of the king, they write year 2 of the king. Mekusher, but a get Mekusher, malach shana monolo shtayim, shtayim monolo shalosh. On year 1, they write year 2. On year 2, they write year 3. V'zimnin, and what can happen is, if you just say that a get Pashit and a get Mekusher are interchangeable, zimnin di yazif mine zuzeh b'Mekusher, Reuven could borrow $1,000 from Shimon with a get Mekusher, and he gives Shimon a get Mekusher. U'misar milei zuzeh bene bene, and Reuven then gets the money to pay back Shimon. He pays back Shimon. Ufarale, and he pays back Shimon. V'amarle havli shtaroi, and he says to Shimon, give me back my document so I could tear it up. V'amarle irkasli, he says, I lost the document. V'chosavle tavra, and he writes for Reuven a receipt. V'chimoti zmane majvile pashut, and then comes a year and a month after the loan was loaned. And he, according to Reb Chanina Megamillah, he could just, open it up and make it a get Pashit. And now as a get Pashit, it means that the loan is actually due, now, right? A year and a month after the loan took place. As a get Pashit. Because when it says year 2 as a get Pashit, it literally means year 2. Ve'amalei, hani hashto diyazfas minoi right? So, and Shimon's going to say to Reuven, Reuven, you're showing me a receipt from over a year ago. This document is from a month ago. This loan that I'm collecting now is a new loan that I just lent you. So therefore, how could Reb Chanina ben Gamliel say that, if you get Mekusha that the witness is signed on the front is okay, because you can always just open up and make it a get Pashut. You can't just open up and get Mekusha and make it a get Pashut. There are issues with the dates, as we just demonstrated. Well, Kasar ben Kosvin Shover. Well, Reb Chanina ben Gamliel holds that we don't write receipts. That rather, when Reuven pays back Shimon doesn't write Reuven his receipt. Instead, Shimon must give back Reuven the document so that Reuven can tear it up. And if he lost the document, well then Reuven doesn't have to pay him. Because we are concerned, B'diuk, that Shimon might try to double dip and be dishonest. So therefore, you'll ask, what about the fact that the dates are different? Well, the dates being different isn't necessarily an issue, because this whole, the whole problem that we were concerned about arises from Shimon being dishonest and writing a receipt, but holding on to a document. According to Chanina ben Gamliel, if Shimon doesn't return the document to Reuven when Reuven pays him back, Reuven doesn't have to pay him back. Umibaki Rebbe b'mekusher, but is Rebbe really such an expert when it comes to get mekusher? Right? Meaning, Reb Chanina ben Gamliel said, well, you could just sign on the front of the get mekusher because you can open up. Rebbe says, what do you mean you can open up? What about the dates? Since when is Rebbe such an expert when it comes to get mekusher? After all, this is a Gemara that we saw the other day. Also the comment of Rebbe. There was a get mekusher that once came before Rebbe. Rebbe, and Rebbe said, and he said, oh, this was actually, a different, sorry, the one from the other day is going to come up later. But anyways, there was a story that a get mekusher came before Rebbe, and Rebbe looks at the document, and he says, the dates are off. The dates are for next year. Ve'amar le Zunin the Rebbe, and Zunin said to Rebbe, Kach minhogo shalom hazo, that the minig in the country that we live in is melech malach shana monulo shtayim monulo shalosh, that on year 1 of the king they write year 2 of the king they write year 3, and this is a get mekusher, and the Chacham adapted that for a get mekusher, we would follow that. So basically, Rebbe didn't know the halacha, right? Didn't know all the ins and outs and all of the details about get mekusher. He didn't know that the dates for a get mekusher are different than a get pashut. So why is Rebbe the one who's calling out Reb Chanina ben Gamliel about the dates? He himself wasn't aware of the dates. So Basut Neshama Mizunin Savra. Well, once he learned from Zunin that there's the discrepancy of the dates, well then he was able to say to Reb Chanina ben Gamliel, hey, there's discrepancies when it comes to dates. There was a document, and in the document on the date it said in the year of the king so and so Arkin. So it says, so Arkin be'etzem means basically Arkin just means year 1 of his rule. As we're going to see in a second, Digin means year 2 of his rule. So Arkin means year 1 of his rule. So it says Reb Chanina, okay, so let's find out in which year this king became king, so that we'll know which was year 1. Wait, maybe Arkin is not a reference to year 1 of his kingship. Maybe what it's saying is that he's a king that ruled for a long time. Rav Oshaya says, Rav Oshaya, Kach Minoga Shul Mazo, this is the minig of this nation. Shana Rishona Korin Lo Arkin, Shnia Korin Lo Digin. That the first year is called, they refer to as Arkin, the second year they refer to as Digin. So therefore, if you see Arkin, it means it was the first year of his reign. Dilma avure avru v'hadar ukmu. But one second, but maybe he was king and then he was not king, but then he became king again, and we won't know which year it's referring to. Rabbi Yirmiyahu Arkin Digin Karule. Well, if that happened, then it wouldn't just be called the second time around. It wouldn't simply be called Arkin. It would be called Arkin Digin, like the first year. Okay. If a person says that I'm going to be a Nazir, as we know from Masechta Nazir, Stam Nazir Shloshim Yom, that by default a Nazir is for 30 days. Sumchus Amar says Sumchus Heina Achas. If he says I'm a Nazir Heina, so then it's one 30-day period. Digin Shtaim. Digin is 60 days. Trigin Gimel is 90 days. Tatrigin Arba is 120 days. Pantigin Chomesh would be 150 days. Tana Rabbanan, I was taught Bayis Ogul. If you have a round house, it cannot become Tomei with Tsaras. Digun, and if there are two corners, if it's round but with, let's say, like a half circle, it's round with two corners. Trigun, or it has three corners. Pantigun, or 5 corners. Einu Matame ben Goyim, those also would not become Tomei with Tsaras. Tatrigun Matame ben Goyim, but if it has 4 corners, then it becomes Tomei with, it can become Tomei with Tsaras. Benani Mila, how do we know this? The Tana Rabbanan, because I was taught, the Maila Omer, right, one pasuk says, well, we have 2 psukim that in each of the 2 psukim it says kiros, plural. Now, each one could have said kir, but it says kiros. So, Lemailo Omer kir, kiros, shtaim. Lemata Omer kir, kiros, shtaim. So you have 2 psukim that's saying kiros when it could have said kir. So that means each pasuk is referring to 2 walls. So 2 plus 2 is 4. Harekan arba. So we see that in the context of tsaras, which is where these psukim are written, the walls would have to be 4 walls in order for the house to become tummy. Okay, fine. How Mukusha does the Kamadi Rebbe, there was a get Mukusha that came for Rebbe, but Amar Rebbe Ein Zman Baza. This is the Gemara that we saw the other day on Daf Kuf Samach. Amar Beis. How Mukusha does the Kamadi Rebbe, there was a get Mukusha that came for Rebbe, but Amar Rebbe Ein Zman Baza. And Rebbe says, I don't see, right, there's no date on this document. Amar Rebbe Shimon Rebbe, the Rebbe, says Reb Shimon Rebbe to Rebbe, Shema ben Ksharav Muvla. Maybe so his son Reb Shimon Rebbe says to him, maybe the date is folded over in the folds. So Rebbe opened up the folds and he saw that the date was in fact in the folds. Hadar Chazabe Rebbe bebishus, and then Rebbe was kind of like peeved with Reb Shimon, with his son Reb Shimon. Okay, Amle Lav Ana Ksavte. So Reb Shimon Rebbe says, well, I didn't write it. Reb Yehuda Chaita Kasve, I didn't write it. Reb Yehuda Chaita wrote it. Amrle. So Rebbe says to his son Reb Shimon, Klach miloshin hara. Hey, stay away from speaking any lashon hara hazeh. Zimnin, another time, Avi Yosef Kame, Reb Shimon Rebbe was sitting before his father Rebbe, who called Pasuk Sidr B'Sefer Tilim, and Rebbe had just finished saying Tilim. Omar Rebbe Kama Miyushar Ksav Zeh, and Rebbe said, wow, this is mamish, a very beautiful text, because of course, right, they didn't have computers, they didn't have printers, it would be handwritten. And Rebbe says, wow, this is mamish, a very, very beautiful text. Omar Lei, and Reb Shimon Rebbe says to his father, Lav on Ksavte, I didn't write it. Yehuda Chaita Ksave, Yehuda Chaita wrote it. Omar Lei, Klach Miloshin Hara Azeh, and Rebbe says to Reb Shimon Rebbe, hey, stay away from Lashon Hara. Bishlam Hahasam, Ika Lashon Hara, Elahacham, I Lashon Hara Ika. But one second. I understand in the first case, you can understand how that's Lashon Hara, right? It was to get Mekusher. Rebbe found it confusing. Reb Shimon says, don't look at me. I didn't write it. Reb Yehuda Chaita wrote it. Okay, I can understand how that's Lashon Hara. But over here, he was Taka complimenting Reb Yehuda Chaita. He was saying, I imagine Reb Yehuda Chaita must have been very happy. Wow, Reb Shimon, Reb Yehuda Anasi was reading from his text, and he said how, commented how beautiful it was, and Reb Shimon Rebbe gave him credit for it. I mean, that sounds like a very nice thing to do. Well, right, so what's the Lashon Hara? Mishum de Rav Dimi, because of Rav Dimi, the Tani Rav Dimi, Achua de Rav Safer, La'olam al Yisaper, Adam b'toivaso shel chavero, shel v'toch toivaso bali dere also, that you shouldn't talk about people at all. You shouldn't even speak about them positively, because once already you start speaking about them, you start speaking about them positively, you speak them enough, you start pointing out negative things as well. Amar Rav says, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Shalosh Averis, Ein Adam Nitzol Meim B'chol Yom. There are 3 Averis that everybody sort of fails with every single day, that everybody violates inevitably every single day. Here her Avera, thinking about inappropriate things. V'iyun Tefillah, and assume, what does the Rashbam say, the bottom Rashbam on the page? Yesh Mefarshim, those who explain that after a person davens, done belibo, he evaluates in his heart, that God must repay his reward, and God should do everything that he needs, and listen to his prayers, the fish is because he davened with kavanah. Right? That a person says, well, I daven, therefore God owes me. Lashon hara, as well as speaking Lashon hara. Lashon hara sakadaitech. Do you really think that it means that what? Everybody just goes around speaking negatively of other people? Rather, avok lashon hara, things that aren't negative in their own right, but can be understood in a negative way, or could lead to lashon hara. Amar Yehuda Amar Rab, rov begezel miut barayus. Most people mess up. I guess most people, mess. Are suspected of theft in one way or another. Umiut barayus. Some people with inappropriate relationships. V'akol lashon hara. But everybody is suspect of lashon hara. Lashon hara sakadaitech. What actual lashon hara? Ella avok lashon hara. But even just like kind of lightweight lashon hara. I don't know. It sounds probably like talking about anybody in any kind of way. Wow, could I guess end up leading to lashon hara, or be considered avok lashon hara. I know the Rashbam says avok lashon hara. Kigun to amri nura be planya barochin. If you say, oh, the light is always on at somebody's house, it could be interpreted as he's always partying, or he's always messing around, and I don't know. But wow, okay. Friends, that was Daf Kuf Samach Daled Masechta BavaBasra. That was an intense stuff. The first half we talked about all sorts of halachos about erased documents. Wow, very technical. In the second half of the daf, we talked about the differences between a get pasha and a get makusher, specifically in terms of dates and different nafkaminas. And at the end, we talked a little bit about lashon hara and iyun tefillah. Very interesting stuff. Peace out.